Hey, it's Rob. I'm back. We're going to do another Offsec Proving Grounds practice machine. This time we're doing a machine called Nickel. It is a Windows box and it is rated as intermediate. And I thought it was fairly difficult, but I was able to get through it. So without further ado, you can see I am on Offsec's VPN and I do have Nickel spun up, and here's the IP address. The first thing that we did was we ran an mmap scan, service version detection T4 aggressive on all ports, and what came back was 21. No anonymous FTP. 22, which is slightly unusual for Windows. SMB, RDP, or Windows Microsoft Terminal Services. 5040, 7680, which you see those quite often on some of these machines. 8089, which is running HTTP. Site doesn't have a title, and 33333, which is also running HTTP, and the site doesn't have a title. So the first thing that I actually did, and just to keep this video brief, I'll just cover some of the things that I tried. The first thing I tried to do was to enumerate SMB. That was a no-go. It was just access denied. The next thing that I did was to try and go to the HTTP sites. So if you do that, the first one takes you to this DevOps dashboard. Now, the weird thing about this is if you click on these buttons, it uses a this isn't a legitimate IP address. This would be one of those IP addresses that is, I believe, if your DHCP server can't give you an IP address and Windows just assigns the address automatically. So the one thing that I thought to do was to potentially just change this to the actual IP address of the machine. And when we do that, we get this not found. So, it was a little bit stuck here, and it looks like it's forwarding to this 33333 website. So if we go back, you see we have list current deployments, list running processes, and list active nodes. So I spent a lot of time trying to do go busting, and I even broke out a new tool that I seen other people use, but I was not a user of it or familiar with it. And I downloaded it and tried it out. And I also did go busting, and there's a lot of directories that come back, but nothing that is helpful, depending on the list that you use. So you can see ferric oxide, which is actually a really slickly written tool, didn't really return anything valid. I even tried to add nickel to the Etsy host file and do some subdomain hunting. That didn't work either. So what I tried to do was to use Burp Suite to see if I could manipulate these requests to this website. And I couldn't really, I'm not that great with Burp Suite. I mean, I'm okay with it, but I couldn't figure out how to manipulate the IP address. So if you capture a request, obviously it's using that 169 address. If I altered that in Burp Suite, I wasn't able to get it to actually work. So what I did try was simply to curl the websites. So for example, if we copy, let's see, list current deployments. If we copy this and then we curl, and let's do this. Okay, and let's change the IP address to the IP address of the actual server we're attacking. So 192.168.1414.99. We get this cannot list current deployments. Cannot get. So I was like, well, let's try and do a post request then. And I actually had to look up how to do that in part because what I had done was just type X post. And what happens is you get this request must be chunked or have a content length. So what I did was I wasn't familiar with that error, so I just looked it up. And using chunk transfer encoding. So if you look, handling the 411 length required error, basically you just need to include this. So if we do this same request again and we paste the content length is 0, not implemented. Okay, so let's try the second one. We'll copy this. Paste clipboard. .114.99, and we'll do a curl request, right? Cannot get. So now let's try and post, right? TAC X post, and then don't forget we have to add the content length 0. Otherwise, we'll get that same error. And when we do this, we actually get a list of processes that are running. And if we scroll up, you can see command.exe is running, and it looks like now we have a username Aria and a base 64 encoded password, it looks like. So if we copy that, we go to our base 64 decoder, and we paste, and we decode. Now, no wise sloop theory 139 is the password. So the first thing that I did was to open another terminal and FTP to 192.168.114.99. And if we use Aria, that's correct, right? Yeah. And then if we paste that password, we're logged in. So now if we do an LSAIL, we could see there's this infrastructure.pdf. So let's get infrastructure.pdf. All right, let's exit. And I believe these credentials will also work for SSH. So SSH 192.168.114.99. Oh, that's the wrong IP address. Sorry. It's 114. Yes. And if we paste the password, we're in. So what we can do is cd desktop dir type local.txt. And there's the user flag. So the first thing after that I did was I went back and looked to see if I could open up this PDF. So we're going to try and open this. And unfortunately, we get a password, which that now means what we need to do is open a terminal here. And we've used the John tools before, so this shouldn't be a shock. But we're going to do PDF to John. And then we're going to do infrastructure.pdf, and we're going to send it to hash.txt. All right, so if we cat hash.txt. So what this is doing is the PDF to John tool is taking the encryption that's used on this infrastructure.pdf and stripping and formatting it into something that John can handle, and sending it to the hash.txt file. So if we send that to, if we cat hash.txt, we can see now we have something that looks a little bit more familiar, like John can handle it. So if we do John, hash.txt, word list, rock you, and we hit enter. This shouldn't take too long, but it may take a minute or two. So I personally prefer John over Hashcat. I just think Hashcat, especially when you're using a VM and don't have a dedicated GPU or anything like that, I just think John's faster. Just my personal opinion. But while we're doing that, Let's see what's going on here. Let's do who am I? Priv. And we don't really have a whole lot here, so that's not good. Let's see if John's done. Still going. So what I might do is I might pause the video, and when I get a hit, I'll be right back. Okay, so that took a little longer than I suspected, but you can see we do have a password now for this infrastructure.pdf. So it's aria4168. So if we copy that, and we go back here, and we try and open this PDF again, we paste in the password, unlock document. So this right here should set off alarm bells. It looks like right at the root of nickel or the machine, there's a temporary command endpoint. I'm not too sure about the rest of this stuff or if it's relevant, but as soon as I saw this, I said, well, obviously we can't get to 80 on via our attack machine because that port didn't even come up. So that to me was my first clue that I needed to see what was listening on this machine now that we have a shell. Because theoretically, if we can get to the base of this question mark indicates that we can potentially run commands after that, because they literally tell you temporary command endpoint. So if we go back to our shell and we do a netstat ANO and we scroll up, and we're specifically looking for things that are locally bound, and sure enough, 127.0.0.1 is listening on port 80. So because we have credentials, I think you all know what's coming next. We're going to forward that traffic from the local host here to our machine so that we could potentially access that website. Okay, so the way we do that is we open up a terminal. And I've showed you this many times, and I will explain it. Let me just change the IP address here, 192.168.114.99. Okay. So on your attack machine, we're going to just basically use SSH to forward that port. So what we're doing is we're forwarding all the traffic on 127.0.1 on our host that we're logging into on port 80 to 8080 on our local machine. So this L means local port forwarding. So we're SSH connection using local port forwarding. We want all the traffic on the machine that we're attacking on port 80 forwarded to port 8080 on our machine. And then we're logging in using the credentials ARIA and the IP address of the machine we're attacking. So if we hit enter and we add the password, we're in. Now, that didn't just log us into SSH. We theoretically should now have access on our local host to port 80 on our local port 8080. Okay, so if we do localhost 8080, we get this dev API started at 2025 the time, right? So now theoretically, if we looked at that, we should be able to, it said that temporary command, we need to put a / and then a question mark. So theoretically, what we should be able to do is put a / and a question mark and then do something like ID. Not ID, let's do IP config and see what happens. And it gives us the IP config for the machine that we're attacking. You can see that's the IP address. Now, there's probably 1,000 ways that you could take advantage of this. The way I decided to do it is a two-step process. I decided to transfer netcat.exe over to the Windows machine, and then with my second command, initiate a reverse shell using netcat. So, what we need to do is go to our Windows binaries folder, which has netcat.nc.exe in it, and we want to open a terminal here, and we want to do a Python web server. So Python 3 tac m HTTP server on 80. And then what we want to do is we want to go back to our command prompt, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer it. I tried to transfer it to Aria's directory desktop, and it actually worked. I thought I might have to do it to users public, but I was able to get it working in her or his directory. I don't know if it's a her or him. So here's the command. What we're doing is we're doing the command, and then we're doing certutil URL cache tacf to my IP address, right? And then we're going to grab netcat.exe and we're going to drop it in users area desktop and netcat.exe. Okay? So if we hit enter, we should get a certutil command completed successfully or something of that nature. So we're going to hit enter. And it says certutil URL cache command completed successfully. So let's see if it grabbed. It did. It grabbed netcat.exe. So now all we're going to do is we're going to use the same exact command, except we're going to use netcat. And I'll explain it. So now we're doing the command prompt, and we have to use the full path to netcat.exe, obviously, okay? And then we're pointing it back to my IP address on 443, and we're going to execute command.exe. So we need to go to our terminal and do a netcat listener on 443. And then we'll come back here and we'll hit enter. And hopefully it should execute a reverse shell. Okay, so it's kind of hung, which is good. And we have a reverse shell. So if we do who am I? NT authority system. So if we go cd c users administrator desktop, and then we do a dir, we can type proof.txt, and there's the flag. So this is a technique that I've used many times, transferring netcat over and then executing the reverse shell. The real key here is figuring this part out. When you decrypt this PDF, it allows you to figure out that there's a command injection point where you can do basically a web shell. Okay, so I would say getting this PDF was key, because it might have been a little tough to figure that out if you didn't have this how to do it right here, because you have to put that /? So the way we took advantage of this machine was we ran an mmap scan. We saw that 8089 and 333333 were open as HTTP. FTP was available, so was SSH, which is not typically seen on Windows as much. We visited the websites. We did Go busting. I did ferric oxide busting. I tried to do subdomain enumeration. None of that was very successful. I even went into Burp Suite and tried to manipulate those requests on 8089, and I didn't have a whole lot of success, so I resorted back to curl, saw that we couldn't get any of those things, but I tried to do a post request, and when I used the second one for listening processes, saw that their command.exe was listening, and it had a set of credentials with the password base64 encoded. Once we decoded that, we used those credentials to log into FTP. We grabbed a infrastructure.pdf. It was encrypted with a password, so we used PDF to John and John to crack that and see that there was a command execution point right at the root of the machine on 80. So we went back to our foothold, did a netstat to see what was listening, saw that 127.0.0.1 traffic on 80 was available, so we used SSH to forward that port to our local machine on 8080. Once we did that, we saw we had command execution, and we were able to send over the netcat binary and then execute a reverse shell using that to get NT authority system, and we were able to type out the proof.txt. So I hope you found this video useful. I hope you learned something. If I used any links, they'll be in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, just want to say hi, drop a comment, be happy to chat with you. I do have a Discord server. Check it out. The information's on my YouTube page. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.